So I got a pretty interesting request to make a tutorial video with a terrible account. We will be taking a look at how we can defeat these two challenging weekly bosses at pretty much the earliest that you possibly can, which is right around adventure rank, I'm not sure, 35 right now. So first we're going to take a look at the team that I'll be using. This account has a Lisa that is, built, I guess. She has a bunch of elemental mastery, 812 elemental mastery. She'll be using this glorious sacrificial fragments. And we can just see that there's just a bunch of elemental mastery. I did level up the timepiece, goblet, as well as circlet with elemental mastery. We have Yao Yao as the healer for this team. Now, I figured a lot of players do have her. But anyway, I built her with just HP and healing. Now, Xingqiu is going to be every new player's best friend because he is just one of the goats when it comes to this. Now, his artifacts are just a mishmash of stuff, but I was mainly focusing on the main sets. You can see energy recharge, hydro damage, and crit rate, and everything else is just whatever. But notably, I did level up the offensive parts of it. You can see, though, that his stats are still a lot to be desired, but at this point in the game, he is likely going to be a very valuable character for us. Now, in terms of constellations, Constellation 0, Constellation 0 Yao Yao, Constellation 0 Lisa, and we have Constellation 1 Dendro Traveler. All their talents are pretty tragic as well. Although I am actually going to level up his talents a bit. There we go. So we did have enough materials to bring up his elemental burst to level 6. Okay, so let's go ahead and give it a shot. Now, first of all, there is a lot of pre-battle preparation that you can do. There are a few places where you can fill up your energy really quickly, and another one is right here, which is much closer to the actual Raiden as well as the La Signora fight. So if you are in Inazuma, I recommend this one. There's just a bunch of enemies right here. We've batteried up our team, and I highly recommend doing a little bit of pre-battle preparation. You can top off your team's health just to make it a little bit easier to deal with. If you do have food, you can eat food as well as have your food bag item here equipped, but this doesn't have the gadget, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing about Raiden is she has a ton of different attacks, and I mean an absolute ton of different attacks. So really, unless like you are gonna go like super crazy and hardcore gamer mode, I wouldn't really bother trying to dodge everything because yeah. But anyway, basically when she hits you, as well as just when some time passes, this will fill up. And when that fills up, she will go into Super Raiden mode, where she has the world's thickest electro shield. Anyway, we can see here that I'm just waiting for her to do one of these attacks that make her more vulnerable. In this case, it's going to be this one. And she has two attacks which make her vulnerable, where we are able to output, a good amount of free damage on her, because she will just stay still. Because otherwise, when you play Circle Impact, it gets pretty difficult to actually deal with. Now, for this one, you want to break one of these, but we can see that I completely failed because I don't know, I'm just not running towards the right one there. But yeah, anyway, she's about to fill up now, where she's going to go into Super Saiyan mode. Now, in Super Saiyan mode, she's going to drain your energy and do a lot of big, scary attacks. So you pretty much just want to use stuff that will break her shield. And the best elements for breaking her shield are going to be Dendro, Pyro, and I believe Cryo as well. So in this team, though, we are running Hyper Bloom, which is going to be, the main source of our damage output for this team. And yeah, I mean, as we can see, we are doing just fine. Now this thing, this little ball thing, you need to hit it with Electro. This will create this giant, area where you will be safe from her. That attack will pretty much one-shot, I think, every character. I think it just one-shots you, just straight up one-shots you. So anyway, just do a bunch of elemental reactions on her shield to very slowly chip away at it. Now she's likely going to teleport, which is why I saved Traveler's Burst there, but of course you can see that her automatic energy drain kind of screwed us there. But that's okay. So now this is a game of hopscotch, but I want to throw that down real quick. But we can see that the swords will shoot electro rings at you where you can just jump, and then the last ring has a double ring where you can jump and then dash to dodge it, but it's not all that important, honestly. So okay, yeah, and now she is in her stunned mode after we finally broke that super thick electro shield of hers, and we need to get more dendro here, and just like that we will be able to take her out very comfortably. So when she breaks her electro shield, we can do an instant replay here. You'll see that your entire team's ultimates are filled up. And actually, I made a mistake by casting Traveler's Burst prior to that to help break her shield faster, because you notice the cooldowns didn't reset. Either way though, it's fine because she'll fill up all your bursts and she'll stay there for quite a while, I think 10 to 20 seconds, just allowing you to smash her. And also she has severely reduced resistances, which will allow you to do a lot of damage. Now, if you don't manage to defeat her in, her stunned state, she's going to repeat the entire cycle again, basically as if you just started the boss fight again. And that means that, she'll go through her first stage fight and then she'll go into Super Raiden if the fight lasts that long. Which, trust me, you do not want to go through multiple phases of dealing with Super Raiden. It is very time consuming. I'll also have a clip where I show you guys where she creates shadow clones of herself. When she creates shadow clones of herself, you will want to attack the clone that shoots an X at you, whereas the other clones will just shoot a single slash at you. And also one more note about the Raiden fight is that it's highly recommended to bring an electro character, because the electro character will easily be able to one-shot that disco ball that you saw. So a Hyper Bloom team is literally perfect for dealing with her for these reasons, because, well, you have an electro character like Lisa to trigger Hyper Bloom, and you have Dendro to break the shield. Raiden herself, if you have Raiden, is great against Raiden, funnily enough, because Raiden does not actually have increased electro resistance, but you do need to do elemental reactions against her giant electro shield to eventually break it. Her giant electro shield will automatically deplete slowly as well, so you could just, stall for time there and, I don't know, just wait a very long time for her shield to automatically deplete. Once you're geared enough, you will be able to just single cycle her out of that quite comfortably. The fight becomes much easier. You don't even have to deal with Super Raiden mode later on in your account's progression. But for now, for this account, which is AR35 with, pretty mediocre characters, basically no 5 stars even that we're using, it's going to be a bit more of a challenge. So the next fight that it appears a lot of newer players have been struggling with is actually this La Signora fight. So Signora has 2 phases. The first phase is where she is in her cryo form, and in her cryo form she's going to shoot, like, obviously a lot of cryo attacks at you. And very importantly, these cryo attacks, oftentimes they leave a trail or dangerous ground, where this ground will hurt you, and it also builds sheer cold. So I'm actually going to let my character kind of get wrecked by this if Yugui would heal me instead of destroying the thing. But we can see here that this little bar down here is building up. Once this bar builds up, you will start taking a lot of damage, DOT damage. And in order to stop that, you can break one of those little things in the corner, and it will actually help dispel your sheer cold, as well as to clear off the ice floor that's nearby you. Let's go ahead and actually attack her. So the first form is pretty unremarkable, honestly. You'll see that Hyper Bloom will make very quick work of her. And once she reaches about, I don't know, like 20-ish% HP, she's going to go into this ice cocoon phase. And you can see how I destroyed another one of those in order to, get rid of the sheer cold and ice around the area. But for this one, you're going to pick up the little pyro crystal flies, and this will allow you to do a lot of damage, cryo gauge damage, to this, funny thing that she's in. You can, of course, use your own cryo attacks, and some electro attacks also break it a bit. But definitely pyro attacks do the best against it. And whenever you pick up one of these, the next attack you do will be infused and will do a lot of pyro gauge to it. Now, the next trick is an interesting one. But prior to this fight, you can see that Signora is just kind of chilling over there. So let's say you took a lot of damage and you brought a healer like Yao Yao or something. You can just, well, look at this. I can just heal in this corner while Signora is just, I don't know, I guess she's chilling. Now that we're mostly healed up, let's go ahead and... I should have been battering up the Dendro Traveler, actually. So this was definitely misplayed, but at the same time, Dendro Traveler is actually pretty bad in this fight because her burst will often just be destroyed instantly, but in this case we were lucky. You can try to time her burst so that Pyro doesn't actually hit the burst, because when Pyro hits the burst, you will indeed lose the burst. Okay, now we can see that the ground is covered in fire like this, which is basically the same as the cryo stuff on the ground. In order to get rid of it, you have to break these things in the corner. And we can see here that we're taking a lot of pyro damage, but we can knock this to dispel the bar as well as to get rid of the fire on the floor. Now, most of Signora's attacks will indeed put that fire on the floor. And that's okay though. And you can see that she teleported, and me, like an absolute baboon, just used my ability to... Oh, okay, so she's doing her giant meteor attack, which just puts a lot of fiery ground everywhere, but you can just break one of these things as usual to clear out the fire ground. And now, let's go ahead and start building up some energy so we can go for another rotation. In this case, we could probably just rely on some electro charge damage. She's gonna do her giant swirly attack now, where she pretty much just, I'm pretty sure she's gonna start it, yeah, so now she just turns into a giant tornado where you can just dodge the tornado, and she shoots out 4 little tornadoes every once in a while, and you can try to dodge it. You can see that my pyro gauge thing here is full, so I'm taking a ton of DOT damage. So the trick here is to actually break one of these to dispel it, and we can also use Yaya's burst in this case to heal up. But at this point, it's pretty straightforward. Just do whatever it takes to do your damage to her, and we should be done. Well, just like that. It's actually important to note that for the first half battle, Signora resists cryo, which is not surprising. She has 50% cryo resistance, I believe. The first form is much easier than the second form. She has much less HP as well in the first form. However, the second form does have much more HP, so do keep that in mind. And the second form resists pyros by 70%. So unfortunately, if your main DPS is pyro, you will struggle a bit more. One of the main things about these fights, especially early on in your gameplay experience, is that healing is an absolute godsend. Healing will allow you to just kind of muscle through, make mistakes, learn from your mistakes. So I did want to talk about what teams you should consider using as a brand new player. For this, I'm going to assume that you pretty much are not going to pull on the gacha, and in terms of like somewhat safe characters for you to invest in. And surprisingly, the main character is actually pretty worth your time, especially for newer players and players that don't plan to whale to invest into. You can get him to the Dendro element, at which point the Dendro Traveler will actually be pretty good. Now keep in mind that the Anemo, Electro, Geo, and Hydro Travelers are all pretty mediocre at best, but the Dendro Traveler is actually quite good, and he will actually allow you to complete a lot of endgame content in this game. In order to build a proper Dendro team, you need an Electro character and a Hydro character. So we can see that Barbara and Lisa are 2 of the guaranteed, Hydro plus Electro characters that you can get in this game, but neither of them are actually best in slot for what is known as a Hyper Bloom team, which by the way is a team that I recommend pretty much every single player in Genshin Impact to have some variation of, because Hyper Bloom is just such an incredible reaction. Eventually you want to replace your Barbara here with Xingqiu, Yelan, or Furina. Any of them are very good for this purpose. And finally, you want to replace the Electro character, which I was using Lisa, and Lisa is fine, at least, for now. But eventually, ideally you want to replace him with either Kuki or the Raiden Shogun. One important thing to know about a Hyperbloom team, though, is that you want to level up your Electro character as much as possible and throw on as much Elemental Mastery as you can. So that means an Elemental Mastery main stat Timepiece, Goblet, and Circlet. And after that, though, the Hyperbloom character, whether it's Kuki or whether it's Raiden, at that point, that's pretty much all that really matters. And you don't even need to farm good artifacts for them. You don't need to worry about crit ratios and all that stuff. You do also need to farm a Deepwood memory set for the Dendro Traveler, or at least one of the characters on your team, but that's honestly pretty easy to do, as all you really need to fulfill is some energy recharge for the Dendro Applier in this team. Now there's a couple more miscellaneous things that I wanted to talk about, and one of them is, unfortunately I don't have any footage of, but it is the lower difficulty feature. So for those of you guys that might have been stuck on the Raiden Shogun fight or the La Signora fight, there is actually now a lower difficulty button that you can click on if you lose the fight, which will obviously allow you to retry the fight, but at a much lower difficulty, and hopefully allowing you to actually get past that roadblock in the story. Now, how did I know all this information about the, enemy monsters? Well, the Genshin Impact Wiki is an incredible asset for this, and we can see here that this will tell us everything about La Signora. It also shows us like their resistances, like Phase 1 Signora has 50% cryo resistance. You can show how much damage you're going to need to do to Phase 1 Signora. You can also see here that in the second phase she has much more health, over twice as much health. This resource will tell you if you get stuck on an enemy, you can find the enemy at the Genshin Impact Wiki. I will put the links to these two specific enemies down in the comments below, but as they say, teach a man to fish and you feed him for life. So hopefully you guys being able to find the information on these difficult fights will help you guys essentially be able to learn on your own in the future. This wiki is so detailed about the enemies that it literally has every single attack, but obviously in just like a quick little fight video that I'm going to show you guys, I'm not going to break down every single attack. You have some crucial attacks here that are important, like this one where she goes into that giant crystal and you need to break the cryo gauge. This will tell you some more information about it. And finally we can go down and we can see, okay, now it's got the fire form, every attack for the fire form. And same with the Raiden Shogun, right? It will tell you a bunch of information about Raiden, and we can see Raiden is much tankier at 350,000 health for her phase compared to La Signora's 188. So that's why you need a couple phases to, well, sometimes you need a couple rotations to beat her. Let's see, yeah, Raiden's got way too many attacks for really to break down every single one of them, and most people honestly shouldn't bother breaking down every single attack. You just need to know a few of the key attacks, like the shadow clone, the giant explosions that will kill you, things like that, and also how her shield works, roughly it decays, as well as you can use Pyro, Dendro, and Cryo. The smaller the number here, by the way, the easier it is to break. That's what these numbers indicate. There you go, yeah. Use the wiki, search up enemies that you don't understand how to fight, and hopefully that helps. So yeah, let me know if you found this type of guide video for newer players interesting and helpful, and if you found it interesting to see me struggle a bit with, a fresh, pretty much a pretty low level to count and stuff against these enemies and stuff against these bosses. And also let me know if there are any kind of beginner friendly topics that you'd like to see me cover, if you have questions on, and if this type of content resonated with you in comparison to my usual more, I guess, try hard or end game content showcases. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Want to Lose, signing out.